Okay, so here's if you do go outside, which you will, of course. um, Dress in layers for winter activities. Okay, always dress in layers, and sometimes it's hard to guess. You just kind of have to uh, give it your own shot because different people's bodies heat up at different rates, maintain heat at different rates. Some people have more body mass, so they maintain heat. Some people are thin and don't have a pretty low body mass index, and so they don't retain a lot of fat, so they get cold pretty quick. So adjust your body accordingly. Um, so this allows you to easily adapt to changing internal and external temperatures. And that's important to know. So part of body sensing is being able to tell when your internal temperature is going up or cooling down, and also what's happening around you that could affect that temperature, that internal temperature. That's the mindful aspect. So be mindful of the weather. So check the weather before you go out. If you're going to be out for a long period of time, if I'm going to be out for a long run on Sundays and it's going to take 3 hours, I want to know which 3 hour window I want to go into that feels like the best weather window. And and things to watch for it when you check that weather is the outside temperature and the wind speed. That's an interesting thing. People don't consider that. Oh, they look on their cell phone and they say, oh my gosh, it's 39 degrees outside. 39 degrees with a 10-mile-an-hour wind drops it down to like 25, So it's really crazy. So be very aware of, check the weather, check the wind speed. And so then don't overdress. If you overdress, then you're just schlepping around a bunch of extra clothes. You want to dress for, recommended, depending on how well you hold body heat, dress for 10 degrees to 20 degrees warmer than it is when you start, okay? For me, if I go out and it's, if it's like under 40, I'll definitely dress in layers. If it's over 40, I can kind of fudge on the layers a little more because I know that my body heats up pretty quickly. So I don't worry about it, but my hands don't heat up. All those years of skiing in Colorado where I froze my fingers off. And so my hands have to be dressed differently than the rest of my body. But if my body warms up, my hands will warm up. So don't overdress, and be careful not underdressing too, because you don't want to get hyperthermic. It's one of those weird things that you can't really feel it going on until it happens. And by the time it happens, you're in trouble. You need to be very careful that you don't lower your body temperature at any time when you're out working out. For that reason, avoid stopping during a workout. If you stop during a workout, don't stop for long, because your body temperature is going to cool down. You've got all that moist skin. You start moving, your moist skin acts like a refrigerator, and it cools you off even more. So don't stop for long. Get into dry clothing as soon as possible after you finish. That is really crucial, because you might be warm when you finish, but if you keep the same clothes on 15 minutes later, you could be really chilled and you're standing around in wet clothes and chilled, and then you can get hyperthermic, and that's dangerous. And good types of clothing to wear are light wool, long sleeve, zip neck. So here's one in the background here. This is smart wool or something like that, and it has a neck that zips up so you can regulate your temperature through your throat a lot. And it's a light wool so that it wicks moisture away, but it stays warm when it's wet. A lot of the plastic garments don't do that. The polyester doesn't necessarily hold heat when it gets wet, but wool does. And the other beautiful thing about wool is that it doesn't absorb body odor like the polyesters do. So polyesters I can't even wear them. I refuse to wear them. You wear them once and throw it in the corner and it fights with itself. And So I highly recommend. It's worth what it costs. They're kind of expensive, but get a good wool zip turtleneck. A vest here. I have a high visibility vest that I always wear, either for hunting season or for cold weather, either one. And at night, cars can see me, or early in the morning, cars can see me. So a vest is a really good thing. And for runners or walkers, the back of my vest is all mesh, where it just breathes, because that's where the most heat in your body kind of comes out. So if you look for a vest, find one that's vented well in back. If it's not, it could get really hot too, even though it's a vest. And then tights, I wear tights in the wintertime, or workout pants. And they really keep your legs a nice even temperature. A wind shirt, this is very thin, it's just one little layer, but it's enough to break the wind. And it also has a high zip collar. So I've got triple protection on my throat. I've got this high zip, I've got this high zip, and I've got this high zip. Okay. And I like having a wool hat because it wicks the moisture away. But if it's fleece lined, the wool doesn't itch on your forehead. So that's a nice combination. They do sell those. I have one that works really well. Gloves, mittens. Some people, my fingers get really cold really fast. There are only certain gloves I can wear, but mittens always work. So if your hands get really cold, wear mittens, or otherwise buy gloves. And the best gloves I've ever found have a product in them that it's one of the products a lot of glove makers use. It's called Thinsulate. It's thin, but it's an insulator. So look for gloves that are on the brand says made with Thinsulate, because those across the board have worked better for me than almost any other gloves. And you can always, what I do, because my fingers get so cold, is I pull my fingers out of the glove and make a fist. And that really keeps my fingers warm. Once they get warm, I can work them back into the fingers and run. So that's a good little trick. A buff or a mask. Now, a buff for a lot of people nowadays is doubling as a mask. Okay, so if you run into somebody on the trail and you have a buff, you just pull it up over your nose and you're good to go. If you wear a mask, if it's really cold out, it's really helpful to wear a mask because it preheats the air going into your lungs and keeps you healthier. Unfortunately, most masks, once you breathe for 5 minutes, it's like stuck to your face like an octopus or something, And it's so I suggest for an outdoor mask for wintertime, go to the local hardware store and pick up a particle mask. They're called a particle mask, and they're kind of dome shaped. They're molded so that they're round and they fit over. And you've seen construction workers wearing them. But those are made with a kind of fiber that holds its shape. And you can still pinch the nose and seal it tight, but it really holds the shape. And so you can breathe as much as you want, and it doesn't collapse in on your face, And those work great, and they're cheap. They're easier to get now than before in the pandemic, but they work well for both. I used them for years. In fact, with one of these particle masks, I could, if I'm dressed right, I can run, below 10 degrees, where normally you could damage your lungs by breathing that. But this really gives you a good volume of air to breathe in, to preheat before it goes into your lungs, okay? I would also highly suggest, if you're using a mask, to breathe through your nose as much as possible, because that will also help preheat the air more. It has to take a little bit longer passage before it gets down into your lungs. I mean, there's a whole number of reasons to breathe through your nose more than your mouth, but just suffice it to say it's definitely healthier for you to always breathe through your nose if you can. You can breathe out through your mouth, that's fine, but breathe in through your nose.
This is not so much a question as a reflection that it sounds like when you talk about a shift in mindset, being creative about how you can exercise inside. Just now, as you were speaking to learning your body and being mindful, it sounds like if folks can go from a place of thinking about exercising outside in the cold as uncomfortable and just not something they want to do, and shift into, okay, what time of day would be optimal? what's going to be happening with the weather, how can I dress in layers to prepare myself, and then learn your body and how your body works when you are outside exercising in the cold, then you can get into an experience where you can enjoy 39 degrees and misting gray skies. It just takes a little bit of learning and figuring out, what are the things that I need to feel comfortable and still have fun, maybe out walking and running when it's cold, and kind of scaling that depending on the temperature. If it's negative 10 degrees, which we don't get too often here, but if it's that cold, having that dome mask, and if it's warmer than that but still in the 20s or 30s, learning where your BMI is and how that affects heat retention. And
Yeah.
it just sounds very empowering in terms of mindset to shift from seeing it as a problem and an uncomfortable experience to an opportunity to learn more deeply about how your body interacts with its environment and how you can work with your body to make the experience of exercising more pleasant, more fun, more doable.
Not anymore. That was very well summed up. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that um, the better you get at listening to your body and knowing all these little things that you can do and make adjustments to time of day, watching the weather, watch your body, the more it empowers you to make your choice about doing what you're doing. Then you're not at the whim of you're not a victim of the weather, and nobody needs to be a
Absolutely.
victim of the weather, and a lot of people are,
Yeah,
and so then you're just not a victim of the weather. So it doesn't matter what's going outside. Good. What do I do? Okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. Um,
absolutely.
but it does take a pretty holistic approach to all of your body. There's all these parts I'm listing here that are important to pay attention to.
Hmm.
And it seems like a lot at first, but once you get used to it, it's just gets routine. It's like
It's,
first time you drove a car, it was, whoa, this is way too much for me.
yeah,
And now it's like no big deal.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying. And I think, again, shifting from that place of thinking, I can't do it. Other people just can handle running in the cold. What you just described and taught us really normalizes that, for an expert like yourself who is out running and, coaching people about running, there are specific strategies you have to make that work for yourself. You're
Yeah.
paying attention to time, to weather, to wind speed. You know for yourself that your hands don't warm up, your fingers stay cold. So you're making sure you have thin slate gloves. Like there are habits you have in place that empower you and
Yeah.
enable you to be out there running, for 3 hours or for 20 minutes, whatever it is. And I think that's just very normalizing, I think, for folks to kind of realize, oh, it's just that I need to learn how my body does outside
Yeah.
in the cold.
Yeah, so I have that Raynaud syndrome where, my
Oh,
peripheral things turn white. As soon as my core temperature
wow.
drops, my toes and my fingers go offline, you
Wow.
know. And
Yeah.
so I have to be aware of that. So even when I go out in temperatures, any temperature below 40, I buy them by the box. I buy those little toe warmers that you can open them up and they have
Yeah.
sticky back stuff.
Yeah.
I have my socks on. I just stick them on top of my toes on my socks
Keep you
before
warm.
I put my foot in the shoe, and I'm good to go. They last for about 3 hours, and by then your feet ought to be warm enough anyway. So I have to do little things like that, but other people don't. But it's something, yeah. For me, I have to watch that stuff and what I can do to make it
Yeah.
better for myself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So how to regulate your body temperature? So here's how you can have control over the weather. Here's how for at least the temperature. So there are three areas where you lose body heat. It's the top of your head, you lose a lot, and through your throat and through your wrists. And likewise, in the summertime, if you're running really hot, anytime you can put water on the top of your head, water around your neck, and water on your wrists, you will be cooler. So if water evaporates off those places, it cools your whole body temperature. If you're cold, you can cover those places and maintain body heat. So it's very different on the times. Just try it sometime. Go out for a run on a cold day or a walk or whatever you're doing, and put your hat in your pocket and just like walk. And you'll feel right off the bat, wow, it's a little chilly up there, you know? And then when you put your hat on, you'll notice how much just more relaxed you are in the whole thing, of just how it just caps the heat on your body, literally. And then the thing about zipping the collars, that throat is a really huge place where you could lose a lot of body heat. And so that's why you want a vest and a turtleneck with a zip, so that as you zip it, you can unzip it a little bit. When you're getting hot, you just unzip it a little bit. If you're still hot, you're going to unzip it a little more. If you want to cool off, you can zip it down even further and really let air evaporate the wetness, and you can cool yourself down. So I find that my throat is the best place to cool my temperature, and I just always usually wear a hat if it's cool out. So fleece-lined wool hat, ear band, or ear muffs if that's your style. Baseball cap for cool but not cold weather. So baseball hat keeps the winter sun out of your eyes at such a low angle, you know. So if you wear a baseball hat, just be sure if you're on trails, you know, turn it around so that you don't get hit with a branch. But it's a really good way to put just a light covering on top of your head that still keeps your heat in, but it doesn't make you hot. So I like baseball hats for that sometimes. That's a transitional headgear. And for your throat, high zip neck turtlenecks, wool, of course, a zip up windbreaker or vest, a balaclava, a buff, or a particle mask. So those three things. So you can go back through this list, make sure you got them in your fitness drawer. And for your wrists, long sleeves, you know, and make sure that they're expandable enough that you can push them up and cool off your hands and wrists if you need to. One place on most people's body that never gets cold is this part of your arm, from your arm to your shoulder. Just doesn't get cold, you know, very much at all. But I've noticed that it can heat up pretty quickly, so I need to slide my sleeves up after a while. Gloves with optional mittens. They make gloves sometimes with a whole back that you can flip over and make a mitten out of it, so it just covers your fingers. But things like that. Okay, so. And then here's body areas to protect: hands, feet, face, and lungs. So your hands, you know, if you have fingers are out in the real cold, fingers that get too cold, you can get, some gloves have windbreak material, nylon on the backside, so the gloves, so it just breaks the wind. For your feet, wool socks or waterproof socks. Wool socks for me work the best. You can buy them in any thickness depending on how hot or how cold your feet run. Duct tape is the best invention in the world. Everybody already knows that, but here's another application of duct tape, and that is if it's transitional weather, I don't necessarily wear my toe warmers, but to keep my feet warmer from wind or cold things coming in, is I'll put my socks on, and then I'll just take a couple strips of duct tape and put them across my toes. And you know, there's no running shoes in the world that are windproof. You know, the wind comes right through the toe because they build them to exhaust heat, right? And so, but if you wear summer running shoes in the winter, your feet they're like right open to the wind. And so if you can cover your foot with duct tape, put it in the shoe, then it won't move around or come off or anything like that, but it really keeps your toes warmer. Easy little trick, you know.
I feel like that's one of the secrets that when you think about athletes who are really out there and aren't fazed by the weather, like there are these little things that you can do that really make a difference.
Really make a difference, and it doesn't cost that much. And
yeah,
athletes are generally cheap because they've already paid money for race fees and everything else.
Right,
So.
and for running shoes and so
Running
on.
shoes
Yeah,
and everything else. So duct tape for those. If you do need better traction on snow or ice or anything like that, I've even gone to the point of screwing little 1/4-inch sheet metal screws into the balls of the feet on my shoes. They're only a 1/4 inch long, so they don't go into the shoe, so they don't hurt me, but they stick out of the shoe, and I can run black ice all day long, you know, never slip. And you can get water resistant trail running shoes. So when you don't have to be a runner, but if you're out on a trail hiking or something like that, get a shoe that has really good lugs on it that doesn't slip, because everybody knows all the clay here in North Carolina is so slick when it gets wet. So you want to have good traction on your shoes, and it helps to have water resistant training shoes. So even though you're not a trail runner, the trail running shoes are really good for that, or hiking boots if you're hiking. For your face, particle mask, balaclava, or a buff. Another one of those little tricks is Body Glide, chapstick, or Vaseline for exposed skin. So if it's really cold out and you're worried about getting frostbite or anything, dryness on your skin, cover whatever's exposed with Body Glide, or I've used chapstick, works great, or Vaseline, any one of those.
And
And
and that's to keep your skin from getting kind of that sunburned or like chapped from the wind and the cold feeling.
yeah,
That's
and
so fascinating.
yeah, and the wind doesn't affect it as much. So when I would go out, if it was a day like in Colorado when I was running there, you could get frostbite on your cheeks if it was really cold out.
Absolutely.
But if I put Vaseline on there, it's great.